going to press this little record button. You'll all get the little request to say okay. And thank you so much. Welcome to the circle. And I think all of you know me, so I'm going to skip that little part because I know all of you. Um, just telling, I just will say this circle has been gathering since 2006. And I'm
Wow.
so glad that you are joining this evening. And because we are a free community, I want to empower all of you to grow our community by inviting others that you know would enjoy and contribute to the great sharing that we do. So I don't do any advertising except on Facebook. But if you know others who would like to be here, please invite them. If you have any questions about myself, Nancy Markow, or the circle, just go ahead and email me and we can chat. I'm very open to doing a Zoom, just you and me, and we can discuss anything that's on your mind. So tonight, I'm really super excited to welcome Stephanie Spencer to the circle, and she is going to be our presenter tonight. Stephanie has a lot of cool things I'll talk a little bit more about. Maybe she'll talk about. But if you want to just take a quick moment to take a screenshot or write down her website, super easy, stephaniespencer.com.
Stephanie
And
J. Spencer.
Stephanie J, thank you. The J is there. Yeah, don't miss that. But it's the normal spelling of Stephanie, letter J, and Spencer.com. And let's just get through our little setup for that we do for each circle. So ways to support yourself and others in the circle. So we know from the Enneagram that there are different ways that we see the world, different ways that we show up in the world. And to honor that, to show that we understand that, please add your desired pronouns to your screen. And if you know the type that you are navigating from within the Enneagram wisdom, it will be nice to have that on the screen too. To do that, you just, on most devices, you just go up to that top right-hand corner of the screen. If you run your cursor there, there's three little dots. And then if you hold it there, it will give you the option to rename. Like you click on it and it will say rename, and then you can change what your screen name says. So thanks to those who've already done that. Throughout the circle, it's lovely to see your faces. I know some people have connectivity issues and can't, but if you can, show us your video. Definitely manage your audio and definitely have pen and paper to take down notes of things that speak to you and that you want to remember. What's coming up next for the intentional living circles is I'm going on vacation and Sophia is going to be your guide. And on the 3rd of September, she's going to talk to you about exploring. She's going to be your guide and the presenter. And those of you that have seen Sophia, she has a lot of one energy too. They're really good presentations. She identifies with type 9. But she's going to talk to you about exploring the Enneagram symbol. I left that off of there, sorry. On the 10th, she's going to be connecting the three centers of intelligence through music. So I asked her to record because these sound really interesting to me and I want to be able to see them. And then on the 17th, she's going to come back and do more on the internal family systems, which is parts work and the Enneagram. She did that once before and was received really well. The thing I want you to remember, please put this in your head, the Zoom link is not the same. We weren't able to get her on my Zoom account. I jumped through a lot of hoops. Zoom doesn't have customer service either. They didn't get back to me. And so she's got her own Zoom link. It's on the website, connectingyouwithyourself.com. You can just go there. The link is there. I put it like 3 annoying times. So you'll see it. It's at the beginning, the middle, and the end of each one of the descriptions of her presentations. The other thing is because I'm on vacation, no yoga. So yoga will start up again on the 19th at 4:30. Not promising how that class will be because I will probably be a little jet lagged. I'm just getting home on the 18th. And then for those who have been enjoying either the Enneagram chats or the Empowered Living course, starting October 18th, those are going to be combined. What it's going to look like is the Enneagram chat, but the material is going to follow the Empowered Living course in tiny chunks because your feedback since 2008 has been continually, this is a lot, Nancy. So I'm finally hearing you. And it's going to be in little tiny chunks. And I know several of you have already expressed interest that you want to do that. So unless somebody has a question, we're going to move to somebody does happy to cover you. Oh, Kelly,
By the
thank
way,
you.
thank you so much, Nancy. I saw you today. I thought I was clicking on the wrong link. I was like, isn't she on an airplane? I was thinking you're on
No,
the airplane
tomorrow
already.
morning.
Okay. We're
But
so grateful that you're here. Like I would be resting a little bit because I wouldn't be able to wake up.
well, I'm trying to actually make myself tired so I'll sleep on the plane, but thank you.
That's true. If you
Yeah.
can do that, I'm like so bad at sleeping on the plane, but so grateful. I'm such a surprise. It's so pleasant to see you, of
Thank
course.
you, Jan. And Kelly, I'm reading your message, and if you will email me, I try to put that together when I'm in Greece. I can post your link on the website, and you just tell me you're muted, but tell me your time. Just
I
email
don't have
me.
a Zoom link right now, but I'll email you separate. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because that would be great. That would be awesome. We are a community,
When
and
is it? What's the day and time that you usually do it?
I normally do Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday at 10, and Thursday and Friday at 4:30. Classes are usually an hour and a half with
Wow.
a centering at the beginning and at the end. So
Full circle. Yeah, thank you.
you don't have to do the same thing as I do. That's the cool thing, you know.
Right.
All right, so I want to guide you as we do each time in the circle into a centering practice. I really believe in my head and my heart and in my body that centering is the key to the Enneagram. So if you would place your feet on the floor, trust me with this. It does have a very energetic benefit. And then as you maybe stomp them around a little bit, bring them to still. Feel the connection to the floor and imagine what's underneath the floor as Mama Earth. And then let yourself settle into a meditative state, feeling the seat of your body on the seat of whatever you're sitting on. Lift the crown of your head tall and relax your shoulders and rest your hands, palms down, in a grounding mudra. You can let your eyes close or hazy, whatever feels safe and supportive of an inward journey, taking your focus and your attention inside you, noticing your parts and your pieces, how you're sitting, how you're being, how you're breathing. And I like to use a 3-center centering practice. And we start out with bringing awareness to the body. And if you like, you can bring your hands across your belly, touch your pinkies at your pubic bone, your thumbs at your belly button, with your crown tall and your shoulders relaxed. Bring your attention, that observer, to notice any tension, any distractions, any resistance to coming into the moment. Let yourself surrender. And then adding the breath as an anchor. Engage with your breath. And I like to use Ujjayi breath, breathing in and out of the nostrils, bringing the air deeply down into the lower lungs, expanding and contracting at the belly, and hearing an audible sound on your exhale as you blow out the air. Letting your inhale bring you more surrendered, your exhale even more present. Releasing that distraction, that resistance, that tension with each exhale. And sensing, as we do in the body, when we bring awareness there, a sinking into a state of serenity, being right here, right now, with your breath in your body, in this moment. And then keeping that breath going, play with me and bring your hands into a prayer mudra, touching the heels, the mounds, and the fingertips. You can rest your hands at your chest, or if you like, you can bring them up to your third eye. Whatever helps you to stay present with your body. But bring your attention now up to the head center, to that observer that you've been using to notice your parts, your pieces, your breath. And then notice what else is in your head. The two hemispheres of the mind, the logic and the intuition. The mudra that you're making with your hands helps to integrate these two parts, these two hemispheres of the mind. And as they come together into a whole mind, it's easier to feel the space between the mind and the observer or the self. It helps you to consciously relax the brow, feel the space, and remember your choice that you have to engage with your thoughts or not. And in our centering practice, I invite you to let the thoughts come and go. And be in your observer, be in your higher self, your high mind. Noticing your body, noticing your thoughts, but not engaging with the thoughts and surrendering with the body. Being right here, right now, and choosing to expand our understanding and our consciousness of our choices. To invite consciousness, awakeness, and presence into the head center. And then from that place, rest your hands across your heart. Let the palms pressing into your chest bring you home to a connection with yourself. this heart center that sits in between the body wisdom, the head wisdom, is this integration place where we get to own our humanness, our unique expression, where we get to remember to forgive this part of ourself, this human part, to show up authentic, to peel away the trauma, the training that blocks us from feeling unconditional love from within inside ourself for ourself. So that we can show up in the circle, real, awake, alive. And then take one more second or so to just reconnect, acknowledge the innate body intelligence, the high mind, and the high heart. Remembering throughout the circle that emotions are something to be heeded, not something to suppress or become. We show up with emotional intelligence, responsible, beautiful, unique humans. And when you're ready, you can come back to our space. Let me tell you a little bit about Stephanie. And on her website and on the description for this evening, Stephanie shared she says, Stephanie is not afraid of hard questions. She loves moving towards the struggles of the human experience to help people find new ways forward. And I think this is a beautiful trait of type force. Stephanie and I came to meet after I saw her do this, something similar to this for IEA Global. She did an amazing presentation, and I immediately reached out to her and she said yes. And I was so happy to also learn, for those who have the same affinity for Ben Campbell as I do, he's been a presenter for us several times, that Stephanie and Ben know each other. And they are doing presentations together. And this excites me to the core because Stephanie and Ben are younger than me, and they are the future of the Enneagram. And even as I'm saying this, tears come to my eyes because we need these future teachers, and they're good, and they know their stuff, and they're here to support us. So a little bit more about Stephanie on the screen. It says she has spent years coaching individuals and teams from around the country, from major universities to local churches, from Fortune 500 companies to small businesses and more. See these movers and shakers. Time and again, she has seen the power of the Enneagram imagery and questions to open pathways for growth and transformation. She also has a book that I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read yet, but I do absolutely love the title and the cover, and it's on my to read list. So without further ado, Stephanie, I'm going to take down my screen, pass it over to you, and let me know how I can support you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nancy. I don't know have you guys ever had, it's so weird hearing someone else like read a bio of you. It's like, I will never get used to that feeling. It's very odd. And it's also actually, I recently hit it's been 1 year, this summer marked 1 year since my book came into the world. And I recently started telling people don't read my book, actually, meaning it's actually a book that is better for a coffee table than a bookshelf. And I hope that's something you'll kind of experience in the presentation today, is it's not really a book you want to read cover to cover. You'd probably get kind of bored if you did. It's more of a book that gives you some prompts that might help you see something a little different. So it's kind of one of those pick it up when you need it kind of experiences. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to pick up some imagery from the book, and we're going to gather what we need. And so I want to begin. We'll test my screen sharing. We'll make sure it's working correctly. So is everybody seeing my slide? Okay, it's looking kind of funny for me, so that's great. It's working. So if anybody did want to double check that they had my website, that's got my information on the bottom. I do have an Instagram account and a website. What we're going to work through tonight is using some natural imagery to think about Enneagram type and to think about Enneagram triads. And I think it's helpful to start with my story of like why I think natural imagery is important and helpful. And I just picked a few images. All of these images are pictures I took. Some of the pictures in the book are not pictures. If I had it my way, I would have taken all of the pictures in my book, but I needed imagery of things like octopus and iceberg and things that I haven't actually taken pictures of myself. So I had to let go of that dream. But when I look at these images, or when I think of myself standing in these places, I think of how I feel and how it feels very different than when I'm reading a book or listening to a presentation or trying to memorize a type description. And there's a way that imagery has this invitation towards seeing something differently. There's a way it helps me let my guard down and allow new things to come forward. And there's a way it embodies experiences. I actually was just talking to Ben this morning because he and I are doing a workshop together in November. And we were doing some planning on it. And I was talking about things like how an image, a river imagery might help somebody. And he said, and I would want someone to get in the river. And I was like, that's great, Ben. Like, that's great job taking it more. I just want people to think about a river and ponder a river and journal a river. And I see you raising your hand. You're also a type 6. I think that type 6, like, no, you got to get in the river. You got to like take it further than that. And I do think that there's something about embodying things that starts to make a different kind of shift and change in us, even as Nancy invited us to put our feet on the ground as we started. And that matters. It matters to be in the world and to touch things and to engage with things. And I really learned this lesson myself through my connection to egrets. So I'm going to tell a little story about that. So I live in Minneapolis, and I'm lucky enough that when I leave my front door, it's about a perfect 5K run to run from my front door around the small lake at a nature center and back to my front door. And in that nature center, I often see egrets. Sometimes I see herons as well, but I've really fallen in love with seeing egrets there. And I started to notice how much I loved it when I saw more than one. That like it would be common for me to see an egret, but if I went through that lake and I saw 2 egrets or 3 egrets, or even like one day, my father passed away in 2017, and I was walking, and as I was walking through, I saw 7 egrets that day, and I thought, like, what is that? What is that gift? And as I've noticed how impactful that imagery was to me, what I thought about was the embodied lesson and invitation that was for me as a type 4. Because I tend to think that what would make me special is if there's only one of me. If the only one is the thing that makes it better or most unique or the best day is if it's singular. And I started to notice how much that wasn't true with the egrets. How each egret was a singularly spectacular experience, and it was even better when there were more of them. And so egrets to me have become that symbol of that invitation for me as a 4 to shed some of that driving for uniqueness as needing to be alone, and to see uniqueness as being connected and being a part of belonging. And so I have an egret tattoo on my inner arm as a part of that reminder. And it really, noticing the way that this shifted something in me really made me want to use imagery more in my practice, and to see what it could invite from others as well. That maybe something just, someone telling me stop trying to be special doesn't really help. This helped. This did something different. And so what I want to invite all of us to do before we even get into some of the imagery is I would love for to invite you, if you have a piece of paper, that's great, but in some way to reflect and notice some sort of struggle you are bringing into this evening that you would relate to your Enneagram type. Because I want to wonder, even in a visual presentation where we're not out in the wild, but we are seeing some of these things out in the wild, if there's an image tonight that might speak to you about that. And so if you're able to write it down or just take it in for yourself, what is a struggle, or sometimes I think about it as just a stuck place. Maybe struggle feels like too big of a word, related to your Enneagram type that you would love to move through a little differently. I'm going to invite participation throughout the evening, and I'm just going to name here that Nancy is recording. And so if you wrote down or holding something really personal that you don't want recorded, we could probably pause the recording, or maybe you could bring something else. I just want to sort of create that safe space to bring what you have, or maybe sometimes we can share about something without sharing all the details of something in a way that still feels safe in community. And I'll also give some time. I'm not going to invite that right away. We're going to work through some imagery first, but I just want to name that would be coming. Nancy, we're going to say something about that?
Yeah, I was going to say we can absolutely even stop the recording during the sharing if that is desired. You can put that in the chat.
So I'm going to sort of ask for your participation in what sticks out to you the most in imagery. And so we're going to do that here by just looking at in my book. What I do is I have imagery for all of the 9 types, 4 different times, according to 4 different triad groups that exist inside of the Enneagram. And so I have slides that show all of those images. And what I want to invite you to do here is just to notice, without even knowing exactly how this is going to pan out for what type is what, if there's an image that speaks to you from this slide. And maybe make a note of what that is. Allow your eye to be drawn to it. It's always okay in exercises like this if there's nothing. If you're like, no, all these are kind of meh to me, that's fine. Is there something you are drawn to? I noticed people taking pictures of the slides. I'm happy to share these with Nancy to email out to you if you would like these images later as well. So if they're helpful to you tonight, feel free to take those pictures, but for the long haul, I'm happy to send these through Nancy.
Thank you.
So
saw that I wrote down the number. I was trying to think, oh, what the numbers tie into the image.
You'll see. I also would do a plug to, if you would like to buy my book, it's easily available on Amazon or through my website. I would tie to the
Thank
numbers.
you.
But we will get to that. We'll get to that too. But for now, I want to let the imagery speak a little louder. Because one of the things I've noticed, and when I've done this work, also I'll just say even why, is that when we let the images speak first, sometimes I've been in groups where people realized that the image that was speaking to them the most was actually one of their arrow points. And when they let that happen, it was even more so something that they needed. So an image might speak to us for a lot of reasons. And so let whatever image speak to you here. These are images related to the head, heart, and gut intelligence centers. These are images related to the triad of sometimes called social stances. I like to think of them as energy triads, kind of how we hold ourselves when we walk into a room. Hornavian groups, it's also called. But just notice what image speaks to you from here.
Could you please go to the previous slide for one more quick moment?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll go back to the Hornavian group ones for a moment longer. These are images related to the harmonic groups, conflict styles. These triads are called different things, but something about how we relate to others, how we handle it when hard things happen. And these obviously are all animals, so our imagery has shifted a bit. Notice which animal speaks to you tonight. And last, we have plants. These plants are about, sometimes these triads are called the object relations triads or the harmony triads. I actually think of them as the collaboration triads. I think this has a lot to do with how we function on a team. Bring that into my work with you. So notice what speaks to you here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do we're going to do some like a vote. We'll be a little democracy. For which slide spoke the most? Like which of these slides, which do you want to talk about the most, those images? Because that's where we'll start. I don't think we'll get to all 4 triad groups. And this is a small enough group. We can have a conversation about, did any particular image speak the loudest to you where you'd want to talk about where the images on that slide came from? And so this is an invitation. The first one?
Yeah, like nature. Well, it's animals also nature, flowers also nature.
Yes, yes, they are all nature. It is true.
Yeah.
But Jan has a vote for is Jan, is that how you say your name?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jan votes for the first slide to start with these images. Anyone have a counter vote to that? Shall we start here?
They're so agreeable. This is such an agreeable group.
But everyone's so nice.
Well, that's okay. Well, this is a good place to start actually, because these become foundational for some of where the rest of the imagery comes from. And I do think even as Nancy was leading us in that centering practice, this really is a core part of finding centering, to find some balance in our bodies and in our hearts and in our minds, which these have to do with that. So I'm going to stop the share for a moment so that you guys don't have to see me sliding through my slides too much. But before we keep moving forward, any questions on what you have already seen and where we're headed this evening?
Yeah, I'm just curious because each slide had 9 pictures and there's 9 Enneagram types. Is the assumption is one flower for this type and one flower for that type, or or the first slide, the rainbow for this and the rocks for that type. Is that how you did it, or is it just
correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So each slide had each of the 9 types represented on it through imagery. And you could even start, if you like that curiosity, you could start guessing what was what on there. We'll be revealing this head, heart, and body or gut center imagery, as that's what we chose.
is it like I found kind of like two stand out, you know, a little bit. I feel like, wow, a little bit strong, clinging to both of them. Is that pretty common, or?
Yeah, I think that's what I love about, well, I love lots of things about imagery. I'm an artist also, so I think that's part of I get drawn to this. But it's there's not right and wrongs, right? Like how can you say what's right and wrong about being drawn to, like, what's better, a waterfall or a rainbow? You know,
Right.
can I like both? Well, I hope so. Right? There's this, it just opens us a little differently to multiple pathways, to possibilities, because we can't, it, I find imagery just frees me from binary thinking. There's lots of ways to go about this. Nature has lots of pathways. And so why can't I have lots of pathways?
I like how you just said, just which one are you drawn to? Because I like all of them. You know,
Yeah.
it's not about what I liked. It was more about what caught me.
And you know, it's interesting also, I would say, as we go forward tonight, notice what you don't like as well. So I had at my book launch party, I actually had like posters up of the images from all of the types. And spoiler alert, the image of the elephant is for a type 9. It's going to be relevant for this story. And there was somebody who is a type 9 who was at my party who said to someone else, I heard this story from someone else, I like all of the images except the elephant. Like I don't want to be an elephant. And the person said, why? And the person who was a 9 started talking about being an elephant and like, I don't want to be loud. I don't want to be strong. And the person said, but you are strong. And you are peaceful. And like by the end of the conversation, the type 9 was crying because it was so clear to her how
Because
much
it
she
was
needed
her.
to embrace
Yeah.
her elephant.
Oh.
And the resistance was because she wasn't willing to embrace that part of herself. And so I think even that can be an invitation, is what are we distancing ourselves from that might to us in a way that we wouldn't expect. Because it turned out elephant was actually quite important for her to connect with.
Yeah.
I also, before we want on our way into the Head, Heart, and Gut Center as one of the triads, I just wanted to show this picture that has, if you've never seen it, the ways that the symbol can break into the triangles of the different triads. And one of the things that really drew me to doing work with these when I was working with teams was because through the triad groups, we have a triad in common with every type. So any type we feel distant from, one of these things we have the same. So as a 4, I might be really bothered by type 1 sometimes, but we're both a part of the idealist triad. Or maybe you're a 3 who really just is annoyed with 5s because they slow you down, but actually you're both part of the competency triad. You know, whatever that type is that feels distant, the triads give us a place to have some connection, not just distinction in our type. And I think that is an important part of this work, to both find out what is it that makes me and my type unique, but also how do I have some things in common with these other ways of functioning in the world? And so one of those things that we have in common with many types is these intelligence centers. And so as I was working through the imagery of this, I thought this was actually the first thing that really struck me. And part of the inspiration for imagery came from, there's a lovely book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she's an Indigenous woman who just talks about Indigenous wisdom in the book, in a lot of her story. And she talked about the 3 sisters, which are these these plants that Native people knew for years that if you grow them together, they help each other. You plant corn and you plant squash and you plant beans in the same garden, and the corn stalk becomes the thing that the beans can grow, and the squash becomes the ground cover that protects all of the plants from other weeds, and they also bear fruit at different times, and like they work together in synergy. And it just had me wondering, like what are all sorts of ways that that nature functions in synergy and in triads, where we could illuminate thoughtfully with imagery ways that these triad groups function, so that it's not just about the image of the type, it's also about the image of these commonalities of the triad groupings.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You mentioned about the three sisters and how you said they're in the same garden.
Mm-hmm.
The way I was always taught is that they are planted pretty much side by side, so that they're actually growing together in little like in little clumps, as
Yes.
opposed to in their own individual rows or something. So they are a little garden unto themselves. You just plant a lot of them.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification, Helen. Yes, there's a way that if we pay attention to nature, it can teach us things about working together and being planted together and things that we have in common. So one of the triad groups that exists, there's actually a fourth element, really, if we pay attention to the wisdom of the ancients and the four elements. The fourth element would be fire. But I thought no one type has fire. We all have fire. So we're going to put the other ones into a triad group. And there's a way that, to me, the wisdom of the body, the gut, the somatic intelligence connects to earth. And there's ways that water symbolizes the heart center intelligence. And there's a way that air connects to the head center intelligence. So I'm just going to read a bit about that. And notice the words and notice what you connect to in those words. And then we'll talk more about the imagery of the types themselves. So types 8, 9, and 1 are in the gut center triad. I personally like to use the word gut, even though I think it's kind of fallen out of fashion, but it just feels gritty to me. And I want to keep the grittiness to this center. Types in this triad ask, what does my instinct tell me is true? Their decisions are based on things like comfort, independence, and energy, which means they can get caught in the struggle of anger as they guard their autonomy. They strive for control by protecting themselves, staying comfortable, or being right. Their communication style tends to be direct, plain, sometimes defensive, and full of nonverbal cues. And at their best, these types process with serenity and strength. So to me, this feels a bit like Earth. So Earth takes up space, boulders, sand and peat, mountains, hills and plains, all these components define landscapes. And in every place in the world, it is the earth that provides ground for seeds to land, to be held and nourished, and to burst into life. The types in the gut center change the landscape of rooms with the way they carry their presence. Others are often comforted by the grounded strength and stability that gut types carry as they filter and process through body and instinct. And that way of processing, gut types work to guard their autonomy, which can bring a stubborn resistance if they feel forced to move. And the way they focus on the simple needs of the moment gives these types an uncomplicated presence that can feel spacious to others. So to me, that feels like earth. Feels like dirt, that resistance that can come, but also that space that can come, that groundedness that can come. So inside the gut center is where we had that imagery on that first slide of rock for type 8, soil for type 9, and clay for type 1. If we are in the heart center, types 2, 3, and 4 are what's in the heart center. And the types in this triad ask, how does this affect, whatever the situation is, my connection to self and to others? Their decisions are based on things like relationships, image, and emotion, which means they can get caught in the struggle of shame as they look for self-worth. They strive for identity by being liked, feeling valuable, or finding significance. Their communication style tends to contain stories, metaphor, and implied or unspoken meaning, and at their best, these types process with authenticity and compassion. And so how might this be like water? All known forms of life depend on water. Humans can survive up to 3 weeks without food, but only up to 3 days without water. It's used in almost every process of the human body. Water also changes shape in response to environmental factors and existing in forms of solid, liquid, and gas. Whether lake, river, or ocean, the waters of the earth are teeming with life. And so the types in the heart center are sensitive to how their movements affect others. Heart types can nourish those around them, bringing a sensitive presence as they process their environment through emotion and connection. As they do, heart types are working to form their identity, which can cause them to dry up or feel corrupted if they aren't careful with their own hearts. They can have more influence than they realize because of how they shape things over time. The compassion and emotional awareness of heart types can provide for the welfare of those in and around their circle. Last but not least, we have the head. See several head types in this room. 5, 6, and 7 are in the head. The types in this triad ask, how can I prepare myself and those around me? Their decisions are based on things like logic, security, and planning, which means they can get caught in the struggle of fear as they search for support. They strive for safety by being competent, having support, or not being restricted. Their communication style tends to be analytical, thoughtful, and sometimes complicated. And at their best, these types process with clarity and guidance. So let's think about the air. Air is the atmosphere of the earth that protects life. It absorbs radiation, creates the pressure needed for water to exist, and retains the heat from the sun. It's the circulation of the air that allows heat to be distributed around the earth. And as air moves around the equator, it allows energy to move. Photons in the air allow humans to see. The types in the head center tend to move above the surface in order to get a better understanding of things. They bring a sense of clarity and guidance as they process the environment through thinking and planning. Head types work to plan and prepare, which can sometimes feel like a pressure that holds others down. They can struggle with fear as they move in space, wondering how to find support. And head types are thoughtful and analytical, bringing perspectives that are missed from other vantage points. The processing of head types protects and provides for the needs of living things. I want to go back to this slide that brought us to the head, to these centers, and invite some participation. So I wonder if someone would be willing to name, if they had an image, if you had an image that spoke to you, that it felt like an invitation to you on this slide, would you be willing to talk about it? Oh, I see a hand real quick from Kelly. Kelly, what spoke to you on this slide?
The very first thing was the rolling brook in the 1, 2, 3, 4 circle.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything in particular speak to you about that one?
Well, I just could picture myself sitting out there and listening to the water and seeing the mountains in the background and just this like piece of calm. There felt like a calm being in that space, sitting on one of those rocks.
Mm-hmm. So that river is the image for type 2. Which again is why I think it's important to not be too boxed in, right? To say only my type is allowed to speak to me, because I wonder if that means there's an invitation at point 2 for you. Is there some way that the thing that you are feeling a little stuck in would be helped by the wisdom of the heart and by the wisdom of connection? Are you willing to talk a little bit about the thing?
For sure. Yeah. You don't have to turn it off. It's fine. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, the ironic thing is my mom was a 2 and my sister's a 2. So I have had people tell me you're a socialized 2 in some ways. So I feel like that, that warmth and how like now I think in my life is there's this place where I'm really about to go into a space of branding my business. And it feels there are places where I'm starting to feel a little bit contracted, and in my body I can sense like a tightening. And so when that happens, it's like that's the invitation to move the energy through the body and to make space to open the heart, right? So and as long as I'm keeping the heart space opened, that's an important piece of my work. and to
Mhm.
not shut down when I'm feeling like fear and where do I start? And oh my goodness. And, oh, who do I need to call to help me? Right. It is more like sitting in the space, grounding in the heart, and then just sensing it all through the body.
Mhm. I see it. This is the beauty of imagery. Like, you don't even need me, right? The image just spoke to you about, right? Like that. Yeah. Stay in that flow of the heart. Like how would that affect everything about how you're branding if you stay in that flow of the heart and the wisdom that a two might share with you about what that looks like, or trusting the connections, being willing to lean on others as you're moving into that new space. Did you say another image spoke to you as well?
There was another one. The second one that I wrote down was the one in the 8th position. I also like the third one, but the first two were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The sprout.
The sprout. So that is 0.9. So that one exists inside of your little triangle. It's a 6. And the 9, the soil actually connects to what you were saying as well, because you're naming to stay in the flow, but this is about staying grounded, but it's grounded in this open way, right? Like rock is grounded in a very hard way. Soil is this grounding that says, okay, I'm ready for the life that's coming. I'm ready to plant something here. I'm ready to open to receive what's being planted. And I think that openness then is something that can sometimes be difficult for a 6 to just roll with that, to receive, to be in that sort of space of believing everything can be supported and okay. And so perhaps it is a wisdom to receive the energy of that arrow point as you're in this work. And also, I think just to be balanced with how we're describing 9s with the image, dirt also gets a little stubborn. It's soft at the top, but sometimes you get dirt in it. You dig a little bit, it gets a little stubborn. And that also could be a part of what 9s, both that can be wisdom. Sometimes that stubbornness is good, and sometimes it's that lesson of keep going when you hit that stubborn spot. Anyone else have an image that spoke to them on this slide that we could talk through? Yes, Yan. Yan? Yeah.
It's okay. It's a less common name. It's okay. Thank you. It's so interesting when you were talking about, I was like, oh, I was gravitating toward two of them the most. And as you were speaking through them, I just thought about the 2 I was gravitating has both qualities. The third one, the one with the rainbow, and also the fourth one, I'm like, because I am very strong in both 1 and 2. So they both have rock and water. And I was, because you were talking about Enneagram 1, and it's earth, but it's like rock. But then because of, I think, my very strong wing of 2, I would never, because I see myself definitely can be very focused or fixated on being perfect and following the rules and being structured, having principles and doing the right thing. And all of that is extremely important to me. But I also see how I do that is not like about myself. It's how I do that through loving others and through that extremely having a strong connection with other people. I just, so it's always like together. It's never stand out as just, so how do I use that 1 to nurture people around me? I think maybe that's why.
So was it this image on the left that you were feeling?
No, the third one and the fourth one.
Okay, so this one with the rainbow and then the river.
But both have the rock
but both have the rock. So let's think about a couple of things here. So the rainbow is actually the image for type 7. So this on the top is 5, 6, and 7, 2, 3, and 4, 8, 9, and 1. But what I want to notice as you're gravitating towards the rock is the image for type 8, which is an arrow point for you if you're a 2. And so to notice that what you're finding in common, what is in the rainbow picture, what is in the river, What's down here is rock. And so I wonder if there is an invitation to connect to that point 8. And the way that 8s, so I want to do 2 things. I'm gonna read. I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about river, since we had more than one person who is gravitating towards river. Then I also want to think more about rock and what rock provides, and see in the listening in the space here, if you connect to something. So first, rivers. Rivers flow into and through terrains and change them. They bring nourishment, create places of growth, and offer passage. When they move hard and fast, they can slice gorges into once smooth ground. Rivers move in one direction while also being responsive to their environments. Rapids form around rocks, currents move past logs, and streams find pathways of least resistance as rivers flow towards belonging in a greater body of water. There are often multiple tributaries that join with a river, increasing its flow over time. Even so, that does not make it immune from being depleted. Rivers can run dry before reaching a lake or an ocean. Its flow is dependent on receiving more water than it gives to its environment and inhabitants. Now let's think about rock. Rocks are solid. They form the outer crust of the earth, providing the base on which existence depends. They're strong enough to be walked on, built on, and climbed on. That does not, however, make rock impervious. It can be carved into canyons by rivers and broken into pieces by earthquakes. Ultimately, rock is not the singular tough substance it appears to be. A rock is a collection of minerals that bond through environmental pressure. Occasionally, this pressure creates gems of striking beauty. Rubies, sapphires, amethysts, diamonds, all these are rocks that have become some of the world's most treasured goods. Rocks create a strong foundation from which mutual flourishing is possible. So I wonder, as you hear a few extra words about rivers and rocks, if you notice anything in an invitation for what you're bringing in tonight.
But it's interesting. I felt like I could relate to, you were saying the other person's like, oh, I just don't like the elephant. Like for me, oh, I do not like that rock. You know, and now when you're just like, rock has its function, and when you're reading it, right? But I'm always so, in my lifetime, I'm so intimidated when it's just that rock. It just feels very intimidating to me. That's the word that comes to me. Because I'm very more of a gentle and nurturing and sweet and kind, that type of quality. So that rock can be very confrontational. It can be very bold, and you know, that strong presence, and that just kind of like really in your face, that like I find it can be overwhelming to me, just to me as the person on the personal level. But then at the same time, I wonder deep inside of me that I want some rock. I don't.
Well, I wonder, are you willing to share what you brought in this evening as the kind of stuck place for you?
It's like I'm open, you know, to learning. And so I love Enneagram. You know, because I realize when I am so fixated, the word is like fixated on the things that I really embrace, that connection, loving connection, that I just want to help others. I just want to connect. I just love them so much. You know, I just love people. Like I love making people happy. Like I could do that all day, and I do. And then, but at the same time, deep down, there was like almost a shame or mourning or sadness, and mixing with anger. Like, why am I not happy? You know, like what is wrong? Like I'm doing what I love to do, but at the same time, maybe I was thinking like, I feel like maybe I need to be more assertive about more standing up for myself. Or like what
I'm gonna key in on the word assertive as we think about rocks, right? This river actually can't exist without a rock, because the river isn't a river unless there's boundaries. And it's usually rocks that create the boundaries that help the river be in healthy flow. And so how might actually it be the combination of the water and the rock that can bring the
Yeah.
contentment you're looking for.
It's
So that
not an obstacle.
right. No.
It's a good stopping point so that I don't run dry.
Yes, exactly. Because
Right?
the river needs boundaries in order to make it
Because I
to
just
its
keep
destination
flowing.
without
It's like
just flowing.
nonstop flowing.
Oh,
It's
yes.
like nonstop flowing river. And then
Yes.
some point I'm just like, oh geez, I'm so depleted. I wonder why.
And see, yeah, it feels like maybe there is an invitation for a rock for you. I actually have, I mean, this is a part of the power of imagery and maybe the weirdness of me being a 4, is also things like I keep a rock. My friend gave me this beautiful rock that's also in the shape of a heart
Oh, that's
that
beautiful.
when I am at my desk and I am feeling like I need to draw a loving boundary, I hold the heart-shaped rock in my hands as a physical reminder of loving boundaries and the need to feel strong and kind together. And this rock helps me do that because and it's actually a friend who is in type 8 and who's one of my favorite humans on the planet, who is soft and kind and boundaried and strong at the same time. And
So
so
natural for them, right?
I hold this rock
So natural.
and say, I can have that too. I have
Mm.
access to that too. Might not be my home base, but it's there. It's in me. It's in all of us.
Yeah, I want it to be like more natural flow
Mhm.
instead of for me, because I struggle. I'm so intimidated by it. So when I do that, it's so awkward and it comes
Mhm.
out to be very angry. And I'm like, I don't like it. Then I start being angry that I'm angry. It's like, what is going on?
You know,
So,
I was working with a client last week and I said, and I don't know if this relates, but we were talking about arrow points and the need to do the work at the arrow points of our number. And I said, the thing is, in both directions, those arrow points are underdeveloped parts of ourselves. And underdeveloped parts of ourselves are immature. So when we try putting them into practice, it will feel awkward and clunky because it's a part we didn't develop. How can we why do we have such high expectations that part we didn't develop would come out mature and healthy and perfect when we try to use it? And so can we give ourselves permission for it to come out messy and clunky because it's going to take practice before it becomes a developed part of ourselves? And that's natural. That's as it should be. And it's okay that it comes out messy and clunky. And that's what it'll take in order to develop it so that it gets less messy over time. Helen, I see your hand up.
Yeah, when you're talking about the river and the rocks, about boundaries and structure, it reminded me of something I heard regarding energy, and masculine and feminine energy, which in this case has nothing to do with how you identify yourself. But masculine energy is often used as described as a container to hold something. The masculine energy could be our boundaries. It could also be the physical rocks. It could be mountains. It could be a stream. It could be trees. It could be anything. And then the feminine energy is often the one that is flowing through it. Mm-hmm. And again, because it's energy, it was described as the whole balance thing, yin yang, black white, right wrong, whatever terms you want to use to describe the balance. But the thing is, we all have masculine and we all have feminine energy within us. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about things moving, I'm thinking if the masculine energy is too weak, then the feminine energy overflows and you could experience chaos, overwhelm, confusion. Yet if the masculine energy tries to control too much, it tries to constrict and tries to cut off the feminine energy, nothing flows and you get blockages and you could experience things like physical pain, or you're just not moving forward, or you really just want to keep fighting against everyone and everything. Mm-hmm. And again, this has nothing to do with being a physical male or a physical female or however you identify. It just has to do with the energy inside of you.
Well, and I think that does, Helen, really beautifully to like why it was important to me to represent this triad with images like this, is to say the earth cannot exist without air and water and earth. We tend to think that either our type is the worst or someone else's type is the worst, or like, oh, that really bothers me in us or outside of us, but to say there is a synergy in these things that is necessary for life. We need air and we need earth and we need water and we need our heads and we need our hearts and we need our bodies and we need them in us and we need them together through learning from people who are more dominant in those types that are not our own, so that we can develop that more fully, because these things work together so beautifully when they're in sync. And when they're out of sync, just as Helen was saying, then if there's not enough boundary, the river overflows. If there's too much boundary, the river shrinks. If there's not enough air, we all struggle. I was just in a place with wildfires and the smoke was in the air and it was hard to breathe. And I'm reminded how important air is. I was outside on a hot day and was reminded how important the clouds are. We need all of these things. We need each other, and all of us have value to bring. So let's think about another one of the sets of imagery. So I wonder if there's another vote here between the images on this next slide, which is that social stances or Hungarian groups, whatever we want to call them. These all have multiple names. The harmonic triads, or the conflict styles, they're also called, or the harmony triads.
I vote
or
for that
object
one.
visions.
If no one's going to speak up, I like this. Let's talk about this one.
Nancy wants to talk about the plants. Okay, any objections to talking about the plants? Next. All right. Well, I'm just going to let you guys see me scan through here for a moment. So these, one of the things I did in my book that's helpful, the triads are often given different names. And so I did like just name all of these different things that they're called and what I call them and why. And there's lots of places you can go. Belinda Gore has great work on these triads. Dr. David Daniels has a good web article on all the triads as sort of a base place of learning all about them. I would recommend his website. I have some things on my website as well. But this has something, these triads all have something to do with how we relate to and provide for the world. And what's interesting about this triad grouping is that 8s, 2s, and 5s are in the same triad group. And that often surprises people when they're looking at this triangle. I feel like that's a harder, like the 3s, 6s, and 9s, you can see that in their triangle all of the time. And then the 1s, 4s, and 7s are over here. And I really felt this. When I was working with a team, and I broke the team up into these triad groups, and I put the 8s, 2s, and 5s together. And what I talked about in those groups is my description of these triads is, how do you show up to this team? What do you offer? And so I want to think about that together for what these different triads offer. So I'm going to kind of do this the same way. I'm going to talk about it more in traditional language, and then we'll talk about more of the imagery language. So I'm going to start on the right because I want to make our way back to the 2s, 5s, and 8s because of the way that feels a little different. So the types in this triad, 1, 4s, and 7s, are in the idealist triad. So they use their intelligence center, which we just talked about, to provide perspective of what could be. So these types offer a different kind of perspective. People appreciate how they move towards what is possible. These types seek ultimate ideals, pushing for higher standards, dreaming of a reality where nothing is missing, or hoping for freedom from pain. So notice how those are different energies. That's 1, 4, and 7. But actually all of them have in common sort of this desire of an ideal that's not being met, which is why this is sometimes called a frustration triad, because it's also about that unmet ideal. This triad is sometimes called the frustration triad because of the feeling that rises from them that doesn't match all of these visions. But to me, this felt like flowering plants. When we think about how plants reproduce in the world, flowering plants have a sort of idealism to them, both because of the hope. Like, I love seeing flowers. It brings me a sort of sense of hope and possibility, but it also means that, like, I'm dependent on something to pollinate me. if I am a flowering plant. I'm bringing one part, but also there's sort of an interdependence that's going to be a little different in those flowering plants. So the types in the idealist triad want to provide a beautiful vision to the world by searching for their ideal. I wanted to describe a little bit more about flowering plants, sorry. Flowering bearing plants actually make up 90% of the plants on Earth. There's almost 350,000 different species. And the various features of creature pollinated plants are complex. Scientists know that it was the connection between flowering plants and pollinating insects that caused coevolution and this sudden explosion of biodiversity in the evolutionary process. Flower traits that attracted insects developed in plants, while features that improved pollination developed in insects. This coevolutionary relationship led to the growth and expansion of both. Life on this earth is dependent on the nutrients provided by flower-bearing plants and their pollinators. So the types in the idealist triad want to provide a beautiful vision to the world by searching for their ideal. They relate to those around them in a spirit of coevolution, hoping to better each other in ways that also make the world better. This triad carries seeds of a utopia within them and can become frustrated when that future doesn't grow. They may also get frustrated when they feel the need to allure others to pollinate and spread that vision instead of it just being carried by the wind. As Dr. David Daniels states, the path for those of us leading with one of the idealistic types is to see into that frustration as an inherent part of the gift that also seeks ideals. There is good yet to come, but that does not negate the beauty that is already here. Compare that to types 9, 3, 6, and 3, which are in the pragmatist triad. So the types in this triad use their intelligence center to provide tangible support and down-to-earth effectiveness. People are attracted to the ways they offer stability. These types look for ways to practically relate to the world, seeking a comfortable harmony, fulfilling productive and ambitious roles, or finding a secure and predictable path. This triad is sometimes called the attachment triad as they demonstrate different forms of constructive connection. So in thinking about how plants reproduce, there's another way of reproducing called rhizomes. And rhizome plants are really smart and pragmatic because rhizomes are massive roots that allow for reproduction to happen without it faster. If anybody has a rhizome plant in your garden, it usually is a problem because it creates these nodes that allow for new plants to grow. So I'm going to read a little bit about that. Rhizome is Greek for massive roots. Though they look like roots, rhizomes are actually modified stems. There are nodes on these stems that produce both shoots and roots and are able to asexually reproduce the plant. Rhizomes grow both below and above the ground in single or in multiple layers, and they're adaptable to what works best for each plant and each environment. This brings an efficiency to rhizome reproduction with this potential to spread too far or too fast and even become an invasive species. When plants have rhizomes, that is the easiest and best way to propagate them, even when there is an option for seeds. Those plants are genetically identical to the parent plant. Technically, a group of plants connected through rhizomes are in fact a single organism. So the types in the pragmatist triad want to provide a practical productivity that keeps the world working. They rely on habitual ways of functioning, storing, and growing naturally alongside others. They are adaptable to their environments and the needs of those around them. This triad also attaches to what works best for them, which can mean an over-attachment to their own patterns. Sometimes it looks like stored resources everyone can benefit from, and sometimes that looks like expansion without thought. As Dr. David Daniels states, the path for those of us with one of these three types is to release from reassuring worldly attachments as a way of being in the world. Allow in emotional discomfort that challenges our relied upon routines. Last, we have types 8, 2, and 5, which are in the relationalist triad. So the types in this triad use their intelligence center to provide necessary support for others. People rely on them as anchors. These types offer themselves to the world, giving the strength and protection of their presence, providing the care and support of their relationship, or exhibiting the reason and perspective of their minds. This triad is sometimes called the rejection triad because they tend to reject something essential in order to avoid rejection from others. So when I broke up that team into the groups and I looked at the types 8, 2, and 5, and I said, how is it that you offer yourself to this team? They all went, oh, and they felt the commonality really quickly that a 5 was offering their brain, a 2 was offering their heart, and an 8 was offering their strength. And how that was different from offering the ideals, that was different than offering the pragmatism. There was an offering of self that these have in common that feels really different because one is offering the gut, one's offering the head, one's offering the heart, but it is this offering of self. And so that to me felt the most like reproducing by spores because that is from the self. That's all the plant just needs itself, while also actually having some vulnerability to that as well. So let me just read a little bit about that. So spore plants reproduce with spores that form on the underside of mature leaves and stems of a plant, looking like small dots on the fronds. In dry conditions, they separate from the leaves and are able to be dispersed by wind or water. Millions of spores separate from plants, but only a few will find the conditions necessary to complete the life cycle and grow. Cryptograms are another name for spore-bearing plants because their means of reproduction is hidden. There are about 12,000 species of cryptograms, with the fern family making up most of them. They're mostly found in shady forests, crevices in rocks, acidic wetlands, or tropical trees. Spore-bearing plants are independently resourceful, needing little assistance to spread and expand what they have to offer. The types in the relationalist triad want to provide an important function for the world through offering something from themselves. They counter fears of rejection by contributing independently from their own resources, reproducing without help. This triad protects itself from depending on others by overcompensating with their gifts, offering themselves so that things will grow. They can hide in their contributions and not reveal their deeper needs. As Dr. David Daniels states, the path for those of us leading with these types is to release the deeply held concern of being rejected and to open the heart to the natural flow of energy that is love and life itself. So Nancy, I might call on you first if you're willing.
Sure.
To name which image on this slide spoke to you that drew you to wanting to talk about this one.
You know, I have difficulty just picking one. So on the bottom, it was the aspen trees. In the middle, it was the reed, the first one. What is that? The
That is a scouring horsetail plant, actually.
scouring horsetail. And then the top one was that very palmy, like a peacock feather one.
Mhm.
So I'm very curious how are these the same way as the bottom 8, 9, 1 and the middle 2, 3, 4 and the top
Yes.
5, 6. So yeah, the 9 just felt peaceful to me. The 2, I guess it's just what is the horsetail reed? I'm curious to know how that relates to my 2-ness. And then the 5, the
You know,
peacock.
the aspen trees, I'm not gonna lie, was a part of the guiding force of how this imagery laid out, because I was like, 9s have to be aspens. Like I knew there were a few images where I was like, I know that this should be the one. And one of the things about that image that's so powerful is if there's an aspen grove in Colorado, so that's appropriate for this conversation, called Pando. So I'm going to read a little bit about it. So because aspens reproduce by rhizome, actually under the
They
earth.
do. Yeah, they do.
Though they look like forests, many quaking aspen groves are actually a single organism. The rhizomatic reproduction interconnects all the trees below the ground. Oh, it's Utah. It's not Colorado. Sorry. One such aspen grove in Utah has been named Pando, which is Latin for eye spread. Pando, it contains nearly 47,000 individual trees with the same DNA and covers 106 acres, weighing 12 million pounds and making it the biggest known organism in the world.
Yeah. I'm very fond of aspens. I have them in my yard, and I was very aware that they're all interconnected. They all share intelligence with each other and resources.
Mm-hmm. And to me that felt so so nine-ish, like that nine energy of there's a certain pragmatism in sharing resources, but there's also a certain peaceful harmony that is in this like aspen grove of all being interconnected. But since you are a two, and we're also interested in that one, I'm gonna go a little bit further into that one and maybe invite you if you're willing to share the stuck place that you had coming in.
Stephanie,
Sure.
can
Well,
you just identify the type for these images? I didn't get that.
Yes, I keep them in the same order on these slides. So it's 5, 6, and 7 on the top, 2, 3, and 4 in the middle, and 8, 9, and 1 on the bottom. Don't ask me why I didn't go chronologically, except that I'm not a 1. So I probably should have like 2, 3, and 4, then 5, 6, 7, then 8, 9, and 1. But here
no,
we
I
are.
like it the way it is. I
That's
like
so funny. So
it.
nobody can guess it, right?
Well, I think it is actually there is a reason to it, which is in the first slide. The I keep the idea of air and water and earth running throughout the other imagery. And so I always want the gut to be on the bottom and the head to be on the top to sort of feel that a little bit.
Yeah.
So when we're in the plants, if you notice, like all of the plants in the middle are water plants. All of the plants on the bottom have a earthiness, and all of the plants on the top are epiphytic plants. They actually grow in the treetops.
Yeah. Very cool.
Interesting.
So the thing I see as, the thing I've been juggling with today is my stuck point is this like over responsibility for all that needs to be done and how I want to come home. Like I want the home, which is so important to me, to be, taken care of. And when we come home, I just want it to be perfect. So that when we're coming home from this vacation, it welcomes us. So I've been balancing between being over responsible and then just asking for help and letting some things go, just being, it'll be okay, trusting. So that's what my stuck point where I've been playing with it today is I can breathe, I can relax, I can go, I went and sat on the couch for 45 minutes before, I got on the Zoom because I was like, I just need this. And what is not done will be okay.
It'll be okay. It'll be okay, right? Well, maybe I'll read a bit about Scouring Horsetail and see if you see a message in here that
Thank
feels
you.
right for you. And actually, one of the things I'll name about it that I think is interesting is I just returned from a vacation to the Oregon coast, and Scouring Horsetail grow here in the Midwest, but there were a bunch of them along the Oregon coast. And I thought, what a hardy little plant. It can live in lots of places. I took pictures of them in several places. I took pictures of them along a river. I took pictures of them along the ocean, and I've taken pictures of them here in Minnesota. So scouring horsetail plants form dense colonies in reliably wet environments, which can include wetlands, marshes, swamps, and river edges. They can tolerate flooding and live in up to 4 inches of standing water. Other names for it include rough horsetail, scouring rush, or snakegrass. At the nodes of scouring horsetail plants, tiny leaves clasp like teeth around ridges filled with silica. The cylindrical and segmented hollow stems reach 3 to 5 feet high with what appears to be a cone at the top. That cone is not filled with seeds as one might expect, but is actually covered with spores that help this plant spread. It grows easily and can even become an invasive species. Historically, these plants have been gathered and cultivated for a number of uses. The rough edges of the stems have been used to scour and scrape pots, hence its name. In Japan, the stalks are dried to make a traditional fine-grade polishing material for metal. The stems can also be dried and shaped into reeds for woodwind instruments like clarinets and saxophones. Horsetail is also an ancient homeopathic treatment. Romans applied the silica in the stems topically to wounds in order to stop the bleeding. Some indigenous tribes boil or dry the stalks, creating a remedy that could be ingested to function as a diuretic or strengthen bones. Scouring horsetails are prolific growers that are useful to humanity for help and for healing. So as a heart type in the relationalist triad, type 2s are nourishing and connective like water while also offering themselves like spore-bearing plants. Type 2s prefer environments reliably full of heart, providing community for themselves and others even when emotions flood their surroundings. They give of themselves generously, sometimes even invasively, as they build those connections. Type 2s offer what they have to others, wanting to give help, hope, and healing. Sometimes they do not recognize how they have been uprooted from their own needs in the process and have lost connection to the flow that provides for them. When type 2s can support others without intruding and offer help without cutting themselves off from their own needs, they bring what is truly their best gift, altruistic humility.
Thank you. I can see why it's a type 2.
Can you, what anything speak to you for what you're facing tonight?
I don't know, the scouring, the scouring of pants, the cleaning, but that's really quite out there. I don't know. I'm going to think about that one. I'm curious. Go ahead.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just curious about the head type, the type 5 too, because we have a lot of head type people here too. So I was wondering
about talking a little bit more about that. Well, I think what I hear in what you brought and in this plant is that there's a tension in the scouring horsetail, is that in some of the ways that it's useful, it requires being cut down, which means that it can't get the nourishment that it needs. And so I wonder what it is to stay connected and growing, and how that might mean releasing some of the ways that a type 2 is used to being useful because of choosing the connection and the growth over the usefulness.
yeah, the letting go of the responsibility, which is just letting it be enough.
A little story about this one. Was somebody who I know who is a type 2 who helped proofread my book, started crying when he opened to this page because scouring horsetails grew in his backyard when he was a child, and he remembered picking them, and he remembered breaking them at the little nodule points, actually, because they just break naturally, and to him they were a source of joy. And suddenly this plant felt like a connection to joy and childlike wonder for him, which I didn't write anything about that. But that's
so
how he instantly felt of the wonder of how much he enjoyed playing with these plants and then blowing through them like flutes and joy. And so I wonder, even as you go on a trip, that connection to childlike joy and wonder and possibility.
Yeah, I think of holy freedom, giving that to myself.
I think for our head types in the room, I'm going to do this without looking at all of them. I'm going to actually offer an ability to sort of see all of the images for a type all together, because there've been a few questions about what is the image for that type. And so we'll start with type 8 here. So this is the triad groups and images that exist for type 8. And maybe we can kind of feel in this slide some of that 8 energy of rock and volcano and cheetah and this big, strong palm-like plant. And in the 9, we have soil. We have we have Norwegian fjords. Every type has a place. So this is actually Mount Marabay volcano. And this is Norwegian fjords. And we have the elephants and the Aspen Grove, which we told those stories. For type 1, we have clay. We have the North American prairie. And we have bears. And we have chokecherry trees. The bears. Oh, I heard a response to chokecherry. Who just
Oh
responded?
no, because I'm a 1 and I didn't draw to particular to that one.
Oh, yes.
I was more surprised. I was very much drawn like because I can relate to the flower because I love flower. I think everything is beautiful, but I'm always noticing the flower, the different kinds of flower because I'm very idealistic. I always think it should be like this, but no, it's not.
Yes, that goes back to that idealism triad of like there is a should be that's also then a frustration of what isn't the way that it could or should
it's
be.
Like to me, it's always like this, in my head.
My favorite image for a type
So
1
funny.
is the bear, actually, because it's part of being in the competency triad. But there's a quote about bears from a Yosemite forest ranger who was talking about why they couldn't design a better bear box to keep the bears from eating the food of the tourists. And he said the thing is, there is an overlap between the smartest bear and the dumbest tourist.
That is hilarious.
Because bears are very smart and they will find a way to get what they need. And so I love some of that ingenuity being connected to a type 1. For type 2, we have the imagery of a river, of the Merced Wildlife Refuge, of a beaver, and of that scouring horsetail. The beaver, Nancy, also carries some of that image of coming back home. There's a lot of language in there about building a den and the importance of a den. For type 3, we have waves, we have the Great Barrier Reef, we have lobster, and we have papyrus plants. Very pragmatic plants when you can make paper from them. For type 4, we have iceberg.
Underneath. Yeah.
That what?
A lot more underneath the depth.
A lot more underneath than what's on the surface. And also the thing I loved about icebergs is icebergs, maybe I think all of the icebergs actually come from the same few sources, because icebergs are all formed from calved glaciers. And so icebergs seem alone, but they are actually all connected because they come from the same source as one another. There's 2 main sources of all the icebergs on the planet. And I love that sense of connection that exists there. For a place, we have Lake Baikal in Siberia, which is actually a lake that has no bottom. It is got a crack that sort of connects to the core of the earth, and the scientists have yet to really find the bottom of the lake because it's just sort of floating silt. And that also feels very foreignish. We have the octopus, which is a sentient being. Octopus, if you haven't seen my Octopus Teacher, fabulous movie, or there's more and more that's come out about how much octopus, they build relationships, they feel. And the swamp hibiscus grows beautifully red in mucky places. Type 5, we have wind, we have the northern lights, we have ravens, and we have a bird's nest fern. Had a great experience talking with someone on that IEA call about the northern lights and how they were connected to her 5-ness and her desire to be seen, and how the northern lights actually are when the magnetic field lights up what is always there. So we're not actually, it's making the invisible visible when the northern lights appear. It's not something new.
What's the bottom one? Excuse me, I saw that several times.
These are the bottom pictures are all the triad groupings so that we can kind of see what they have in common. And so that's the 5 is a part of the head center, the withdrawing or receptive energy type. the competency type
Competency type.
with harmonic or conflict styles, and then the relationalist type with the harmony triads.
I think it's so interesting what you're saying about the Northern Lights. I learned this week that crows are actually this beautiful rainbow, colorful, brilliant peacock of birds, but we don't see those frequencies, so they just look
Mm.
black to us.
Mm.
Sometimes when they hit the light just right, they shimmer, and that's when we can see the edge of what you could see. And so I thought that was really interesting with like the Northern Lights. These are there all the time, and that's just the moment where you can see it.
Yeah, and doesn't that feel sort of five-ish, right? There's so much there that we can't always see, because the five can withdraw it from us sometimes and be nervous to be seen. The raven, I got to learn lots of things when putting these imageries together, but the raven learns to mimic the call of certain animals in order, like if something, because ravens are scavengers, and they can't always, sometimes an animal dies and the ravens aren't strong enough to eat the animal. So they've developed a call where they'll actually call wolves, and the wolves will follow the call of the ravens. So, and
Yeah,
then the
they
ravens will
can
eat
mimic.
leftovers.
They
They can
can
mimic calls.
they can even mimic humans.
Yeah, they're very smart creatures. They're sort of amazing. They look
I
ordinary.
was
They certainly are not.
really wondering for type 5 why you picked the dandelion.
Oh, that was the only way I could figure out how to picture wind. It's
Wind.
actually it's
Gotcha.
wind.
Okay. All right.
Which is this sense of this thing we can't see, but is a really important force. Which I feel like sometimes that's that energy of a 5, of this moving wind that we can't quite grasp, but is actually helping everything make sense and move. In 6, we have clouds. We have, I sort of stretched the place for 6, because it's less of a place and it's more of a time period. It's the equinox, and the fall equinox. Burrowing owls, and then this Queen's Tears bromeliad, which this plant that you named earlier, Nancy, is one of my favorite images, because it is it came from working with a 6 who was really bummed out to be a 6. And it was a time when I was looking at the book and she was like, nobody likes 6s. I'm always like, she's like, I'm always like the voice that other people don't want to hear. And I was like, man, I need to make sure that the plant for 6 is really beautiful, because I think a lot of 6s have that experience of their beauty not really being seen or appreciated. And I found this plant that fits sort of the criteria, because the imagery is, it needed to be an epiphytic plant because it's a head center type, so it needs to be something 6 in the air. So Queen's Tears bromeliad grows in the treetops. And what looks like flowers are actually a part of the leaves and protect the tender flowers. So it has this protective element to keep the flowers safe. And at the same time as being tender, it's quite resilient. So if it gets knocked out of the treetops, its roots change to be terrestrial roots, so it can still grow on the ground. But in that process of being changed, it actually can drip its pollen and look like tears, which is why it is called a Queen's Tears bromeliad. It has some really beautiful properties to it. And for type 7, we have rainbow and hurricane and goldfinch and orchid for the imagery. And so I wonder if we were to, somebody maybe who hasn't been a participant yet, if we were to pull up all of the images for your type, and we would see what sticks out to you from your type. Is there anybody who hasn't participated yet who want to think more about an image? Well, I think Sophie, you're talking, but you're muted. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. I was trying to find the button. Okay, so hi everyone. First off, this is fascinating. Oh my God. Who knew? But anyway, so as a type 7, it's so interesting because I'm looking at all these pictures and I'm picking pictures, and I didn't pick any of these.
Huh.
I am so far off, but the rainbow now and the hurricane, I have no idea. But here's what's really interesting is as a child growing up, middle school into the high school years, I was overly fascinated with rainbows. And everything I had, like my bedroom and everything, it was, I mean, I couldn't own enough rainbows. So I kind of find that to be interesting. But I did not pick any of those pictures. I'm just like, I'm kind of speechless. But what's the connection with the rainbow and the hurricane with the type 7?
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of those things is what I really hope for. So I was very intentional with the imagery I chose in the book so that it made that it was imagery that worked with the triads and therefore had a framework and made sense. I was sort of sick of people, honestly, it was built out of frustration a little bit because I was sick of like the randomness of imagery, like, you know, that sometimes people will be like, you're like this coffee flavor. And I'm like, I don't understand why though. Like, why am I that coffee flavor? Why am I this? And I wanted to have a robust sense of a reason behind things. But I also don't want that to be limiting because I think like the egret isn't on any of these. That's my image. That egret story I told is personal. That's an image that helped me. And I hope that everybody is more inspired to find an image that works for them than they are feeling constrained to have to make my imagery work. I hope this is a launching point for you, not a box. It's out of the box, into the wild is the name of the book. And so that's why I wanted to start with just let what speaks to you, and then wonder about that invitation. So were they images that were connected in an arrow point or any other sort of way to 7? Do you remember what they were?
Maybe some, I mean, I'd have to go back, but yeah, some of them were like the ones, the one, type 1. And yeah, I'd have to go back, but some of them were connected, but none of them came directly from a type 7.
And I think that's okay, right?
Yeah,
I think
I
that's
do too.
why do you think that's okay, Nancy? You were responding with energy to that too.
Yeah, because we are all of the types when we're fully awake. And so they're inviting you in to explore other aspects of yourself to help balance yourself, in my opinion. I I don't want anybody staying in their box at their identity, you know, the core type. Like the core type is important. It's where you start on the map, but the ultimate goal is to own all of it. So it makes me excited that you didn't just pick 7.
I did one of the first trainings I did was with Dr. Jerry Wagner in Chicago, and I love the image that he talked about with that. It said when we start out in our Enneagram work, it's like the circle is very big. And when it's the circle of the symbol is very big, we are very far away from all other types but our own. And as we grow, the circle shrinks, which means we stay our type, but it's much easier for us to access the wisdom of any of the other types when the circle is this size instead of this size. Because now all we have to do is reach over here. We don't have to walk a mile to go find it. And so there is that sense of shrinking the circle and pulling on other wisdom as a part of being our best selves at our home base point. But let me read you a little bit about rainbows. We have
I want to just reassure Sophie I'm a 7 as well, and I didn't pick any of those images either.
You did not, Tammy? That's amazing. Okay, good job. Good
Maybe
job.
that's something to say about your 7-ish too. But
I mean, well, see, that's the other thing I would say that also says something about 7s, because most of the language I would have about 7s is about not being restricted and not being held back. So why on earth would you want to be held back to the imagery of your type? As a part of being a 7, you'd want all the possibilities. So take them, take what the image has to offer you.
So
yeah,
is
there's
that
so many beautiful images, but and some of them I was drawn to thinking, oh, okay, I relate to that, but you know, because of some preconceived notion. And then like for the animal image, I related to the burrowing owls, but I didn't want to because they looked so skeptical and so negative. But I couldn't get away from that.
You know what the burrowing owl does that's really cool, because they live in colonies and they really support each other. They're very loyal to their group, but they're also just really smart because they live in the ground more than they fly. One of their biggest like threats is bison. I'm going to go back to that image for a second so you can see them. And because they're like have these eggs, like they're taking care of their young in the ground, and bison will come around and will lay down and will end up covering the hole by accident where the burrowing owls could get out. So they've learned to mimic the sound of rattlesnakes.
Wow.
So that the bison gets scared away and they can stay safe. Which
That's
I love
smart
that.
six. That's smart
They're
six.
smart little owls. So let's go back to the rainbow for a minute and wonder about the invitation for a rainbow. Because I would say, even for sevens, to say, okay, is there resistance to any of the seven energy that could actually be an invitation, just like that elephant story I told, right? Sometimes something that we're a little distant from is something that is an invitation for us because of our distance from it. So rainbows occur when light is reflected from water droplets in the air. Those water molecules are more dense than the air molecules, which slows down and bends light. The colors of a rainbow always exist inside sunlight. The water in the air at the place rainbows form reveal those colors through the ways different wavelengths bend in response to the water droplets. Its colors bring out what is already there. The bright colors do not have to be created, conjured, or worked for. They only need to be brought out. When people see rainbows, they tend to respond as if it's a special or even magical experience. They color the sky with brightness, making everything feel a little different because of their presence. The most conspicuous and spectacular rainbows can be seen where there is a clear sky in the direction of the sun, but shadowy, dark rain clouds still cover the rest. These are the conditions in which a more rare double rainbow can appear. It's the storms and the darkness that cause a rainbow to shine more boldly. It sometimes appears that rainbows move away from people as people move towards them. This happens because the conditions that form a rainbow actually cause many rainbows to exist, but only one can be seen from the vantage point of the viewer. From a different vantage point, it may actually be a completely different rainbow. They cannot be pinned down. For generations, rainbows have been a symbol of hope. So, sevens, anything speak to you in that image?
I guess maybe as a seven, we're very optimistic and we're always seeing the good in things and we're always seeing the positive. So to me, maybe that's the rainbows. There was a storm, it was weathered, and now you have this beautiful rainbow, the positive outcome from all of it. So I guess I don't know.
Stephanie, your words that went with the imagery really spoke to me in bringing out the piece about the storm and the darkness are necessary for a rainbow, because I think that's the piece that we try not to pay attention to. But in actuality, the storm and the darkness are necessary.
Last night there were giant storms in Minnesota, and actually a friend of mine posted to social media a picture she took because a double rainbow formed while the sun was setting in the storm and a lightning strike was going through the rainbow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So talk about coexisting. It was a rainbow and a sunset and a lightning strike.
Oh, you
all
need
at once, and it was stunning. It was like the sky that you didn't think could exist.
I think it's that hopefulness. I have this thing that I'm just so drawn to that rainbow. It's like the end of the day, there's always hope, regardless. It's that hopefulness is so drawn to me.
And I think, to your point, Tammy, part of what's in here for a seven, I think, is the invitation for all of us seeing sevens more fully, and for sevens doing this themselves to say the darkness and the hope is coexisting in this image.
It can't be together. I mean, it can be all
sometimes we
there.
don't give sevens credit for the depth that they have, and we think of them as optimistic in a rose-colored glasses way as compared to a coexisting with the darkness way. And sevens who have done their work are holding that tension really beautifully to help us see the cloud and the rainbow together. I think we are in our last few moments here, so I want to just see how we want to close. And I was just going to see if there's any like questions as we close about kind of the whole of that. There's plenty we didn't get to, but hopefully it feels like an invitation to explore more and take some of these journeys of imagery yourself. Again, out of the box and into the wild. You can get it on Amazon really easily. It's also, I have a certain number of copies available on my website that I can shift as well if you wanted to order it from me directly. Either one's fine. Helen, you have a question.
And to share, don't forget to share about the workshop you and Ben are doing.
Oh, sure. Yes. I'll do that too.
Sorry, Helen. I just want her to make sure she shares it.
No, not a question, but just a comment about rainbows before we move on. Because when I look at rainbows, one of the things they say to me is possibilities, magic, belief. And they're overreaching. No one's really knows where they start, where they end. But they're just so filled with possibilities. And I don't know if that's something a 7 might do, or something a 4 might say, or even a 2. But rainbows are possibilities, and they're infinite possibilities. And rainbows and northern lights and crows have been around a whole lot longer than we have. So it's there, all that energy, all that possibility. It is just there. And I wish you could have been able to post that picture your friend did on your slides. I would love to see that double rainbow with the lightning strike through it. Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking, I wonder if we could pull it up and just like show it to the camera. I might try here in our last few minutes. Well, and I love where you're taking it there, because I think to me, this is the power of imagery that's connected to nature, is that there is something bigger when we're connected. Like I just on this trip had the privilege to be in an old growth redwood forest. And when I'm around giant redwoods, I'm like, it's okay. What have these trees witnessed that I have no idea? And I'm stressing about my little tiny life.
Well,
right. And there's this way that it just can bring a sense of peace. Not, that it's all going to be okay, not because it's actually going to all be okay, but that at some level it is, even if it's not, because I'm connected to this bigger sense of that. And I think nature can provide that grounded sort of sense.
And the other thing about rainbows is we don't need to see them in the sky during storms. Sometimes you'll see them in puddles on the ground, or in little oily things, or just as the sun is going through your windows or something. And again, that's just a reminder of how amazing life can be. And when you see, or sometimes when I see rainbows in these little oily puddles that don't look the greatest, it's like, wow, this is what's existing beneath the surface. This is why people dug in the mud to find this root or that root, or that, or like animals dig in the mud to survive and to lay eggs and everything. So it's just amazing that rainbows can be those big infinite things. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
That is an unfiltered picture. The sky was that color pink. The rainbow went through it, and the lightning strike went through the rainbow.
Wow. When was this, you said?
Last night.
Oh, okay.
Last night in Minnesota.
Oh, and the sky is it purple, or is it just
because it happened at sunset.
Okay.
So with all that power of nature that Helen's bringing us to, Nancy wanted me to promote. So on November 16th, so it's a ways out, Ben Campbell and I are doing a workshop together, and it's a virtual workshop about getting out into nature. And so we're really going to be talking about imagery, and we're going to be talking about getting into, he calls it nature wanders, getting outside where you live. So it would be like some virtual teaching and equipping, but then you're not going to be on Zoom all day, because nobody wants to be on Zoom all day. It'll be a bit of together to be equipped to go out into nature where you live and to come back together and to talk about it. And so there's information about that linked on my website if you wanted to learn more about that. We might be, if you have any thoughts on, if you're like interested, but it feels too long, he and I today were just talking about, do we want to shrink it? Because even though it's not going to be Zoom the whole time, it still feels maybe too long when it's virtual. So we might be shrinking the time frame, but so let me know if you're interested and would be interested in it being shorter, because that's currently in debate, but there's information on the website. Yes, it is going to be live. So it's a virtual,
No, I mean live in like person, eye to eye.
Oh,
Real
like,
life.
well, so Ben lives in Maine and I live in Minnesota.
Got it.
I
I had to say.
do want to give a plug for the big Enneagram retreat that Ben does. I did it last year, and Sophia did it too. And it, the wandering was never long enough. I'll just say that. Like, I wanted to stay out wandering longer.
Where is the retreat?
It's in Minnesota.
One is in Minnesota with Ben, and then with Chelsea Forbrook and Milton.
And Milton, yeah.
Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And
the IEA, the International Enneagram Association Conference, is going to be in Minnesota in July as well. So it's a hopping place to be.
We're going to be going to Minnesota.
Oh, that's Lisa's in July. I wouldn't want to be there in the winter.
Yeah, July. Actually, this is quite a lovely place to be in July. I will say that you can get
nice and cool
here. Yes. So, well, no, not cool. I would actually say just be careful. Minnesota has large temperature swings. So in the summer, it's in the 80s and it is humid, and but there's also a lot of lakes and rivers, and so.
So it could be warm, huh?
Yes. Nancy, is there a way that you typically like to close these circles?
We do, but we used up all the time. We love to go around the space and just have everybody share appreciation. So if everyone would just pop your little thoughts into the chat so Stephanie can feel your heart and your appreciation for what she's brought to us tonight. I really appreciate that. And we didn't get to hear from all of you, and we will I love hearing from all of you, but I do have to go because I have
you're going to Greece in the morning.
So I'm going to Greece in the morning.
Don't
and
miss your flight.
I still have a couple. No. Oh my gosh. My husband identifies at type 3, and he has so much 6 in him when we're traveling. We are literally getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and our flight is not until 10:55. So don't even get me started. I'm going to have a nice long breakfast at the airport because we're not missing the flight.
Have a wonderful trip.
But
have a safe and fantastic trip.
So thank you all, and Stephanie, do look at the lovely things that people are sharing in the chat about you and for you. And thanks everybody for being here. And please, please, please remember, Sophia's Zoom link is different, and it's on the website. She's here. Hi, Sophia. And she's got great stuff for you coming in September, and I will see you at the end of September. So thank you, Stephanie, from the bottom of my heart. I look forward to giving you a real hug at the conference in July.
All right, sounds good.
I will be there, and I hope many of you can go too. So with that, good night, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, Nancy.
Bye, Nancy.
Have a wonderful trip.
Yeah, safe